that good?
We are
Can you
live.
see?
I can see. It's a great cover. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with E Pluribus America, and we are back again with another edition of EPA Live. And today, I am deeply honored to be speaking with Mr. Pierpont Mobley. He is an author of this great book we'll be discussing, and he's also an activist, a Washingtonian, longtime DC activist, a member of the Washingtonian Hall of Fame. Mr. Mobley, you've certainly made your mark, not only in Washington D.C. but in American history and in American culture. And so, thank you very, very much for being with me today on EPA Live. It is truly an honor to have you.
Thank you for just inviting me to be connected with you. It's very unique how we met and where I am now. So I feel real comfortable talking to you about my life and about what we're trying to convey on this video.
Absolutely. But let me set the stage, Pierpont Mobley. I want people to know the magnitude of the person that I have the honor to be in conversation with today. Um, Mr. Mobley has written a book called The Black Side of the White House, and it tells an inspiring story of your life story, your activism in Washington, D.C., and your public service under four presidents in the White House Personnel Office. As a matter of fact, Pierpont, you are the first African American or Black person appointed to the White House Personnel Office. You wrote the first affirmative action plan for the White House and 11 executive offices, served 20 years in the DC National Guard and volunteers for uh, Eleanor Holmes Norton, DC delegate. And you've mediated hundreds of cases in DC. You're a champion of equal employment opportunity. You started your career in the federal government. And you've certainly made your mark, Mr. Mobley. So, again, welcome. And what have I missed? Tell me a little bit more about yourself before we go into your book.
Well, I tell you what, you didn't miss much, but maybe I'll just go back to the original, how I got into this human and civil rights.
Yes.
Unfortunately, while I was a kid right here in D.C., I was playing
Mhm.
ball, and the ball went over my head from a fellow named Willie Wood, who is also a Hall of Famer for the Green Bay Packers. And he threw a ball
Mhm.
over my head, and the ball went on the other side of the street. I ran over at 9 years old, ran across the street to pick the ball, and a white male told me to get my behind on the other side of the street. So I had to go back just briefly and talk to my mother and father and say, what, why would this fellow say this to me? I hadn't done anything to him. So my mother and father, both sharecroppers from South Carolina, when they
Mhm.
first got here, told me that this is how other people treat us. And I didn't understand it. So when I got old enough to realize it, I said, well, let me just find out why people are treating people wrong, unfairly, based on just their race. I hadn't said anything to him. We didn't injure anybody, but I was really concerned. So that's how I got involved in human rights. And in fact, I don't think that while you're going to school, I didn't play very good role while I was in school. I went to four different high schools just to get a diploma at the age of 20. But I realized after 21, 22, I thought getting in the reserves in the army, that there was a little bit more than my environment because I was raised in an area in DC that a lot of people weren't very successful. And so as a result of that, that's how I got in this. And one thing led to another. I did break a lot of barriers simply because I just couldn't understand why people didn't respect people just because of their race. And so
Yeah.
I was I was a recruiter for women in the reserves. I was a recruiter for African Americans in the reserves. And for some reason, everybody always put me in these places where I had to do something related to affirmative action. And as you quoted earlier, yes, I wrote the first affirmative action for the White House, and that was a hell of a burden in itself because by being only one out of 30 employees that was African American, it was a challenge for me to even try to get anything through that. I wrote 3 affirmative action plans for the Department of Army, so I really got that, and so I had to go back to graduate school, get a master's in employment law to specialize in a field so that I could make sure I was comfortable standing up in front of someone representing them on the basis of Title VII, which is discrimination law. So,
Yes.
all right.
But before we go ahead.
No, go on. You got a question for
Okay.
me?
I was going to say before you even got there, how did you get to be the first African American to be appointed to the White House Personnel Office? How did you get there? How did that? What are all the elements that came into play, the variables that came into play that really got you to be in a position to be bestowed that honor? Can you tell us a little bit about that? How you
Yes,
got to the White House?
yeah. How I got to the White House was very strange. My next door neighbor, who was my mentor, Enid Gray, knew that I'd applied for a job with the Metropolitan Police Department. I passed the test, and I was getting ready to go on the police department, and I was directing traffic at 7th and F Street Northwest. And my best friend, who had also applied in the police department, got killed. And so, as a result of that, my next door neighbor said, "Look, why don't you come on and take a job in NSA, which is in Fort Meade?" And I stayed there for 3 months, and all of a sudden, they had this big loudspeaker said they were looking for couriers or people that were interested in working in the White House. That's how I applied for the job, got in line, and after I had been interviewed by a panel, they looked at me and started smiling. And so I was selected to work in the White House. It was kind of funny. My wife, my mother was so proud. I think she was a beautician here in D.C., and I think she probably told everybody in the whole United States of America that she had a son that went to school for 4 different high schools, who was about a C student, and all of a sudden he's working in the White House. So that's how I got in the White House. How did I get into personnel? Was I was walking down in the confines of the White House, and this gentleman, a lawyer, came up to me and said, "Hey, you're Pierpont Mobley." I said, "Yes." He said, "You know, we've heard some good stuff about you." I said, "What was that?" He said, "I tell you what, you in the reserves, used to be in the police department, you're in reserves, you live in D.C. How about you working in personnel?" He said, "You got a background in personnel in the reserves." I said, "Are you joking me?" He said, "Yeah." Out of the clear blue sky, I said, "I would love it." So in 1967, right before the riots, he told me specifically, "You know, we need somebody of African American." At that time, they called Negroes or black. He said, "We need
Mhm.
somebody personnel because we don't have anybody in there." I've been here 41 years. I'm a lawyer. I'm the chief executive clerk for the White House. Been here 41 years, and we've never had a black in personnel. And I think you fit the bill because you're sharp, you dress nice. And I said, "My dress." He said, "Oh, you dress really nice." So those were the caveats that created me getting in the White House. And reluctantly, I'll tell you this: when I got in the White House, they put me right at the door because the staff didn't select me. He did,
Yes.
William Hopkins. So he put me right at the door. And as soon as you come in the White House personnel office, you open the door and hit my desk. Bang, bang, bang. So I found out that really that was a that was an indication for me I shouldn't stay there long. Get out of there. But they gave me also the determination that I said
Yeah.
no, and my mother kept on pushing me. She said, "Don't you go nowhere. You stay there, stay there." So I had 2 or 3 major issues that ran across me while I was in the White House. One is uh, the, my boss, the Clear Blue Sky, told me to select this lady to work under me. And I said, "Why?" He said, I said, "Well, I've never heard of her." He said, "Well, no, I want you to select her. She's a good person." And forced me to sign. He said, "Now, you know, I'm going to give you a promotion if you do this." So I
Mhm.
signed. Come to find out, next week, they had gone on their honeymoon. he had just made me promote his wife. And I
Oh
was, oh, come
goodness.
on. I was, oh, that was, that. I've had several of these. Another one I had that was very strange was I was in the, as I said, I was in the reserves. I got in the reserves from high school, really. And
Yeah.
I was, uh, uh, so I went to a meeting. If you're familiar with a reservist, every once a month we go on a 15 on the weekend, we go to training. Well, I went to the DC National Guard and the training, and the commanding general called me up and said, Sarge, young sergeant. He said, get up here. So I came upstairs. He said, look, he said, what kind of job do you have there? He said, do you know I just got a letter in my hand saying that you either have to leave the White House or you have to leave the reserves in 5 days. 5 days? He said, yeah. He said, well, how much military service do you have? I said, 16 years. He said, well, I'm sorry, but you have a big job over the White House. You, you cannot stay here. The Joint Chiefs of Staff said, you got to get out of the White House, or either or. So I went home and I just got married, talked to my wife, and we made a pact that I would not leave the White House personnel office. So I actually resigned from the reserves. Now, during that period of time, I was getting a direct commission to a major, and I had to suck my pride, and I didn't retire as a major, but I decided to stay in the White House. So when I left, when I decided in the White House, the director of personnel looked at me and said, "I know you're supposed to, I know you're supposed to uh, leave." I said, Miss Rob, I've changed my mind. I'm going to stay in the White House. And she was so dejected, so angry, because she thought she got me. She knew that she
Mhm.
was me get out of. Well, she had heard I made a mistake, and I often tell people not to talk too much about their job. But I told a very good colleague of mine that I had just been that commanding general had just told me that he wanted to make me a direct commission to a captain, and that since I
Mhm.
had a degree, since I was going to law school quietly, because I didn't tell nobody I was going to law school, since I
Yeah.
emphasized the White House didn't pay for me. So anyway, make a long story short, that's what happened. And I'm sorry I'm talking a lot, but I'm just trying to give you an overview of what I had to go through. Now, I do want to let you know that while I was in the White House, I'm sure I helped a lot of people get jobs. And in fact, I saw two secretaries. One was assigned to me, and she took some application and threw them in the trash. And I was watching. I said, Barbara, what's going on? Oh, nothing was wrong. Nothing was wrong. So I waited until she went to the bathroom. I went to the cafeteria, and I went in and I saw two of the applications said Howard University. I said, oh, she had thrown away those two applicants who applied for jobs in the White House. She threw them away. So I realized came up with a strategy. Every time somebody applied for a job in the White House, I was going to find out who they were, and if they had anything to do with a female or African American, I'm going to ship it uh, out of the out of the White House. So what I would do, I would put note on there, notes on them, applicants, and I put, this is Pierpont, White House stationery. Please find this person a job. And I sent it to her. I sent it all over the
Mhm.
government. I
Mr.
sent to a thousand. And in fact, one fellow, when I left the White House, it's very ironic. At that time, I was a senior specialist. When I applied for a job to the Interior Department, some fellow out of the Clear Blue Sky called me up and said, it wasn't a fellow, his name was Harrison. I'll never forget it. He said, Pierpont Mobley. I said, yeah. He said, you applied for a senior job over here as a EEO director. I said, yes, I did. He said, well, I tell you what, you got the job. I said, I beg your pardon? Right on the telephone. He said, you got the job. I said, why is that? He said, because you, that's how I got to be the director of personnel over here because you forwarded my application to someone. I said, what? So this was unbelievable, unbelievable. So in the book,
Well,
I emphasize that.
Mr. Mobley, you turned your camera off by accident. Any chance you could turn it back on so we can
No,
see this great
I,
story?
no, uh, when did I do that? Present, video file. Uh,
Yeah,
uh,
your camera just went off.
my camera went off.
Yes, but I can still hear you just fine. But your camera is
Okay,
not on.
I don't know how my camera went off. I don't know what I did.
Right here. There you go.
There
Oh,
you are.
hey, that's my
Hi.
son. That son is
I
off the. He's
don't
off
you
the.
love sun?
Yes.
Son? It's very nice to meet you. Is that the son of yours that chose? Are you the one who who chose your parents' pictures for the museum? I'll show you now. Let me show it to you because
Yes,
it
it is.
says mom and dad. Did you choose this picture?
Yes.
Okay, all
Yes,
right.
that's
Yeah,
me. Thank you.
so,
Thank you.
yeah, I figured. I figured. So this is great. It's very nice to meet you. You must be very proud.
Yes, I am. Thank you so much. Nice to meet you as well.
It's
Thank
very
you.
nice to meet
Okay.
you. Yeah. All right. Thank you. I'm a boy mom. I have a son myself, so I get it. You must be very
Are you?
proud, and it's always nice when they show up. So,
Are you? You're old enough to have a son?
yeah, believe it or not.
Let's move, let's move on.
Well, Mr. Mobley, I'm so honored to have this opportunity to speak with you and also learn from you and also share with our audience, basically the blueprint that you've created. You've had the opportunity to serve under 4 presidents, and your mom had the foresight to encourage you to stay there, and you guys made a decision to. It was that important to you, which really speaks a lot about the African American experience in America and in politics. As a matter of fact, one of the I'll show this again here because let me see. I had this photo up, but when we look at the White House, um, you know, one, these are the builders of the Capitol and the White House, so African American roots run very deep when it comes to the White House, Congress,
Absolutely.
American culture, the nation as a whole. So
Mm.
your place in history is incredibly significant. So you've had the opportunity and the privilege of serving under 4 presidents, and the stories that have come out of there have culminated into this book that you've written. Can you? What would you like what do you want readers to know about your book?
I think one of the primary objective of the book was to try to motivate younger uh, uh, African Americans and females that one does have barriers, and there are a lot of barriers that will be confronted in your career. Since I also am a career type, that I've interviewed a lot of folks in terms of trying to get jobs by me being a personalist. And so
Mhm.
the issue was that when I decided to write this book, it took me almost 30 years to write the book, but the last 5 years was the one that really culminated for me to just go ahead and finish the book. And that was when I met uh, uh, several people that worked under the under the Trump administration. And as
Yeah.
a result of that, I had gone to a funeral for a young man that I'd gotten a job 35 years ago, and he had passed. In fact, he was a reverend of a big church here in D.C. And while I
Mhm.
was walking out the door, about 4 or 5 people grabbed me by the arm and told me, said, Pierpont, we worked with you in the White House. I said, no kidding. I said, that was 35 years ago. Briefly, they said they were still there. And a lot of people don't realize In the White House, it's about 120 people that stay there. That's why I stayed there so long, because
Yeah.
you have correspondence unit, your records unit, legal unit. So all these units are there, and a lot of people back in the day when I went to the White House, it was a you were proud when somebody saw that you worked in the White House. I said, whoa, it was something. So of course, being African American and dressed very nice, I almost got a chance to be looked upon as a very big leader. So as a result of once I left the White House, I left the interior and agriculture, I decided my own firm and started doing a lot of mediation and representing clients in the field of Title VII.
Mhm. I see. And you also, in the beginning of your career at the White House, you were really getting into recruiting. I was going back and looking at some of your work.
Mm.
And let me see if I can pull up the video here. 1 second. Uh,
Band will return to coverage of the 11th annual meeting of the group Blacks in Government. The discussion is entitled Where the Jobs Are, and it focuses on job opportunities for Black Americans.
We have two presenters this afternoon. On my left is Ms. Chris Bullwire, and on my right is Mr. Pierpont Mobley. Mr. Mobley is an EEO manager, chief of complaints and adjudication, Bureau of Mines, Department of Interior. He has a Bachelor of Science and a Master of Arts in Law Studies from Antioch Law School. He's a former White House personnel official.
A lot of times we are really in a lot of strange situations when we go out trying to recruit people. An example, case in point, I was recently about 2.5 months ago down in Atlanta, down in a dual degree program they have down there for engineers. And it's called Atlanta U Incorporated, which consists of 5 colleges. And they have an agreement, a reciprocal agreement with some of the colleges here, like Boston, Georgia Tech, and where the young kids, young people coming out of college, they get dual degrees in engineering. Now, I was down there as a federal employee trying to solicit. Could you imagine what they were looking at me saying? It's kids, young people coming out with 3.8 and 3.9 average grade point averages, and I'm telling them about a GS5. Wasn't that serious? Real serious business now. Real serious business. So we go right back to the same question: Where are the jobs? Who are we in the federal sector? Who are we really trying to service now? Either we're servicing the people that are already there in the federal sector, or the people that are coming out of school that didn't get the opportunity to go directly to college. So therefore, they are in a little better position to go in the federal government where they can work and also attend college at the same time. Now that falls more in line with us in our community, I think. So going back to the original question, where are we? Where are the jobs? It seems reasonable to believe that the jobs are in areas, the federal sector, in the big enclaves of the Eastern, Western, and the Midwest. And being recruited, one deals with a lot of unique circumstances, a lot of situations. Oh, incidentally, in talking to those young people about jobs, I didn't get over too well, okay? But we know for a fact that there are some classification series throughout the federal sector that's really a big problem in terms of minorities and women. Case in point, engineering, the technical area. They're very strange because all of a sudden we are finding a lot of women, a lot of minorities getting in those jobs. As opposed to 1980, today, it's a whole new ballgame. It's very competitive, very competitive.
Very competitive indeed. And you know, what a time, you know, listening to that and hearing your assessment at the time and fast forwarding to this time, what are your thoughts? How much progress can you point to and say that you've made in your activism and the work you've done? And also talking about the employment field, the workforce, and the differences that you've seen. What are your thoughts hearing what you used to preach and do back in the days versus the realities on the grounds today? And you ended by talking about technology and STEM and science and engineering and African American women. And if you can end on that, and what are your thoughts on that? So it was just a very nice throwback. Go ahead.
Yes, it's ironic that you would have that, so I could see that. That it goes back to a good little while ago. But here's the unique thing about that. Back in those days, I was one of the original parts of the personnel that created blacks in government.
Yeah.
We had 4 or 5 sessions for the sole purpose of trying to find a way to get through this little this maze, simply because people of color and women were not getting through there, and so we had to come up with something to make it more competitive. Now, what we really focus on is that more training would get them through those little barriers that were hit. So, in the federal sector, it's only about 5 classifications that you must have a degree. Other than that, and this is what Blacks in Government was about, telling people, don't worry about that. You don't have to have a degree in these, not unless you're going to be a doctor, lawyer, or engineer. You don't have to have a degree. 32 semester hours will make you qualified. So we came up with a strategy, and as a result of that, going back to today's environment, right before I retired, I had about 7 people on staff, and all of them used to shake their head trying to figure out how did we get up here, because Pierpont always had something to show them on how to take a course. In fact, when I was in agriculture graduate school, I made a suggestion that anyone that wanted an upper mobility program, they would, if they could take these 3 courses, maybe they could pass the muster and get to a GS9 or a GS11. Not only that, in the interior department, I think about this briefly, but in the interior department, I found out about the graduate program in law school. And I must have turned that on to about 14 African Americans and women. And in fact, I would say at least 11 of them went on to graduate school, got a master's degree. And in fact, I just met one 3 weeks ago, and she just looked at me and started grabbing me because she said, you made me go to law school. Last but not least, think about today. In today's environment, the reason why everybody's talking about DEI and all these acronyms, but the bottom line is we've come a long way. Corporate America and the federal government realized that we at the table. Now, how did we get to the table? By perseverance. A lot of us went to school at night. I often do a lot of public speaking there in the community. In fact, I'm working on a program right now with 12 young men trying to get to stay in school, in high school. But let me just answer your question. Today, anyone with common sense in the work environment now knows that people of color have come a long way. We are everywhere. And it's, I hate to
Mhm.
say it, especially sisters. I hate to say it. I said people of color and females. And Kamala is a prime example. The way
Yes.
things today, it's a prime example. That the way
Mhm.
things, and we did a lot of political. I'm very political. I worked on 5 campaigns, actually managed 5 campaigns along with my wife jointly in D.C. and abroad and another state. And so as a result of that, we realize now that maybe the the top of the ladder gotten real small now because people of color and women are now vying for those jobs. So, if in retrospect, if I can go back about 35 years, we see that one of the major reasons, and people actually say it today. I remember when a threat was against the law. When I went to law school, if you threatened somebody, you almost going to jail. But today, it seems as though that people outside of the female and people of color, people are just threatening now, and there's no reason, nothing they can do to them, which is unfair. So yes, we've come a long way, and the way things are going now, we continue to go a long way. And one of the things that I did mention, and I forgot to mention, is the fact that those 4 or 5 individuals who told me that they were working for the White House 5 years ago, 6 years ago,
Mhm.
they all told me how toxic, as opposed to when we were at the White House, when people respected one another. The whites and the blacks,
Mhm.
everybody seemed to be getting along better 35 years ago. We had
Oh, really?
racism, but it wasn't overt. Today,
Yeah.
it's just it's unfair, really. And so therefore, we are on a very unique cloud right now, and that it seems that I wrote a paper, an essay, not so long ago, and I'm just saying that it seems as though the law of the land has been circumvented. It seems as though that anyone can change the law if they want to. They can be involved in the law, and they can come up with
Mhm.
some very good lawyers. Now, I do want to say this: since I retired, I've represented about 12, 14 folks. In fact, 2 of them were Harvard lawyers, represented them. Okay, and some ma- major cases.
Yeah.
For some mediator with that master's in law, I get a chance to not pass. I didn't pass the bar because I didn't take it. I was going to take it, but well, that's another story. But in brief, uh, a lot of people realize now that we are a lot of people of color and women at the top of this whole situation in terms of employment. Can you imagine a person now in personnel now can make a decision that they feel comfortable with in making it? Back in my day, we were afraid, so we had to do it. We had to hide and try to
Mhm.
help Jeanette, try to help her,
Mhm.
and we couldn't do it directly, but we could find some way to do it. And
Yeah.
and the way in which the strategy that we had in blacks in government was
Mhm.
an asset to us to learn by
Mhm.
training one to be in an environment where you can actually help one another.
And it's so interesting because those really covert maneuvers to be more inclusive of
Mm-hmm.
those that have been neglected and historically oppressed has turned into something really significant, including the DEI movement. Even
Yes,
though that's under attack, so even though before you had to sneak around, I
yes,
think the DEI movement has made a huge strides in being able to be more bold about achieving human rights and justice in the workforce. So let me that really leads us into our into our next video that I want to play, because when we're talking about DEI and it coming under attack, it's a real issue. It is a real and ongoing issue when it comes to our national debate on DEI.
Absolutely.
And this is
In recent years, diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI initiatives, have become a divisive subject in U.S. businesses, educational institutions, state legislatures, and here in Congress. Unfortunately, many of these initiatives, which many assume simply promote equal opportunity, have in some cases become integrated into employment practices to a point where the civil rights of employees are violated. DEI in some forms means preferencing racial categories and disfavoring other racial categories. It's discrimination with a fancy acronym. Racial discrimination is wrong, it's immoral, and it's illegal in the employment context. Next Tuesday, July 2nd, we will celebrate the 60th anniversary of the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 into law. Title VII of that law makes it an unlawful employment practice to discriminate in hiring or against employees once on the job because of their race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. When employers systematically implement employment practices that discriminate on the basis of race, it doesn't matter that it's dressed up in a fancy acronym like DEI. The law says that's illegal racial discrimination. And it's illegal whether the victim of that discriminatory practice is white, black, Native American, or any other racial category. All one needs to do is review the disclosures of many Fortune 500 companies to witness the implementation of literal racial quotas in hiring and promotion. Hiring managers and executives are encouraged by their companies to institute hiring quotas on the basis of race or face cuts to their compensation or incentives. Can you imagine the disgust of those who crafted the Civil Rights Act to find out that 60 years later, some of the largest and wealthiest companies are still not just implementing, but publicly celebrating the racial discrimination at their companies?
Mr. Mobley, considering
Yeah.
all your activism and all the work you've done to even the playing field in this arena, what are your thoughts? What are your feelings when you hear Congressman or Chairman James Comer talk about DEI and really look at it as a threat to the American worker, and that it's actually discriminatory? What are your thoughts hearing what Chairman Comer had to say?
Well, it reminds me of when about 25, maybe about 30 years ago, when we started talking about reverse discrimination. And in a nutshell, that's basically what he's saying. I remember working on some parts of Michigan's case, when Bakke and all these other big cases came about. And in fact, while I was with the Interior, I actually was the manager of 4 class action suits. And these suits, in particular in agriculture, the black farmers. I'm the guy that created the black farmers, basically. And I talked to a young man maybe 6 hours, and when it was all said and done, he came back with 7 different states how they had denied black farmers from getting loans dating all the way back to 1912. And we took it to Attorney General's office. So that's how you got the black farmers situation. But if more and more you think about what Comer is talking about, what he's really saying is it's unfair for me to look at Jeanette and say I want to hire her because she's qualified. Now think about that. That's really what he's saying. I have a mindset now that I'm gonna try to make the playing field right. So to doing that, I can't have it in my mind to say, well, if it's right, why can't I hire her over him? That's the threat. The threat is what happened in the last 30 years a lot of people that are in the positions, and like myself, who's a trainer, because I've trained all over the place on DEI, diversity, inclusion, conflict resolution, team building. Everything comes back to the bottom line is respecting people, differences. And so as a result, what Mr. Comer is really talking about is that he wants to now discriminate against those people that had been discriminated against a long time ago. So it's very ironic that that the system has gotten so convoluted that now we threaten others who's always had full reins on what they could do. Period. So in a sense, I'm reminded of several cases that I had where in Minnesota we had a class action suit, and the fellow said, "All you guys come up here, none of y'all are qualified." And he said it, and all four of us came up doing DEI, and all four of us had master's degrees, and one was a doctor. And he didn't know it, but I heard him in the back. He was a researcher, right? He said, "Here we got here. We have to listen to these people, and they're not qualified." So what has happened is, when I think about Comer, and I hate to him like that, because respect is you gotta work on it. I can't give it to you free. You got to do something so I can feel comfortable giving it to you. But in this instance, he is really saying that you all caught up with him. You all caught up. You got the training. You went persevered through school. You stayed up half of the night trying to study with your family and your children and all. And while he was sitting there drinking booze at the bar, excuse the expression, and saying that where'd it come from? Where it came from, the perseverance. And now that they're up here, where equality is more prevalent than ever before, now we want to turn the tables back. We want to say that DEI is discriminatory. It's taking white men and putting them on the back burner, so to speak, not respecting white men anymore. And so, therefore, they are setting a pattern right now that is creating nothing but havoc. You see all the dissidents, you see all the fighting, all the argument and employment now, specifically in employment. Because remember, that's where all our money comes from, employment. And the mere fact they can feel as though that Pierpont Mobley has got an upper hand on him simply because he was black. But they didn't look at a piece of paper. They didn't go back and look at the file. Pierpont Mobley went to school for 14 years on a part-time basis. Nothing was free. Nothing was free. So I wonder about, I know, and all of us know now, especially been in human and civil rights for so long for the time, and former commissioners and all that, they realize now that we've gotten up to a point where we're becoming very competitive with the leaders. Now, what constitutes a leader? What really constitutes is the behavior. Now, I used to do when I do a lot of training, it's called behavior styles. And the behavior is, can you cope with a person of color being your leader? Can you imagine having a woman tell you, no, you can't do that?
Yeah.
It's appropriate. Can you imagine how to work? And think about it. Then you got to go home and tell your son or daughter who's sitting there at the table, I had to take direction from Pierpont Mobley, who's a black guy who, I don't know if he got any education or not. So they don't tell the whole story. So unfortunately, I really believe that the statement that Mr. Comer had and what he was talking about was in direct contrary to what the whole civil rights movement is all about.
I agree with you 100%, and I do think that the more ground human rights and civil rights makes, the more threatening it is to those that feel that it is a threat, to that equal ground is a threat. That mentality by itself is actually disappointing. But I think you're going to appreciate what Maya Wiley says, and she is the CEO and president of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. So this was her response to those sentiments.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the proud president and CEO of the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights. We will enter our 75th year next year, and we are the civil rights coalition that is responsible for fighting for and helping pass every single civil rights law you just heard the ranking member mention in her opening statement. I say that because we have a 74-year history, both of standing and fighting for the Civil Rights Act of 1964 when it faced a 60-day filibuster in the Senate, 60 days, the longest filibuster in the history of the United States Senate. And ever since then, we have had to link arms across the most diverse coalition in the country that looks like a majority of the country, that has most major religious faiths, that has labor, that has educators, that has everyone. And we have linked arms to ensure and continue to protect the gains we have made. And one of the things I just want to acknowledge is that we all here agree that discrimination is wrong. And that is exactly why we know diversity, equity, and inclusion, a creation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, who we commemorate in its 60th year this year, helped create. I want to underscore that DE&I, diversity, equity, inclusion, has been made divisive despite the fact that a majority in this country and businesses have embraced it because it's good for the bottom line, as well as advancing equal opportunities for everyone. And I just want to remind all of us that it is Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JPM Chase, who referred to himself as a self-described, red-blooded, unwoke capitalist who is standing by diversity, equity, and inclusion because it's good for business.
So, she said a lot there. One side is saying diversity, equity, and inclusion is a threat. The other side is saying it's clearly not. We're making inroads and making the playing field a little bit more fair. However, we are facing a stark reality about the direction of the country because President Trump has been elected. He will be serving his second term starting next year. So we're at a crossroads when it comes to the direction of this country. And one of the issues that we're facing is DEI, and Project 2025 seems to be really blueprint to kind of unravel, some would say, all the work that has been done to reshape it to fit what's been refusing to die. So, what are your thoughts on this whole DEI situation? What are your concerns about Project 25 when it comes to Title VII? Are we looking at new realities? Is it an issue that should be protected? Is your work done? What would you say to upcoming leaders, folks in your field, and all the work and the blueprint you've laid down. How do we maintain it? How do we keep going? How do we face the real threats that are coming at us, especially with this new administration when it comes to DEI in the workforce?
Well, I tell you what you stated does give us a broader look at what's really happening. I mentioned earlier, 5 years ago, that those 3 or 4 individuals that I encountered, they were all people, white folks, being very honest. They were saying how toxic this was in the Trump administration, point blank. So therefore, I interviewed them. In my book, I mentioned to them. I also mentioned a little bit about Clarence Thomas, who I had a unique experience with many years ago while I was in law school and while he put his finger in my face. I'm saying all that simply because the way we are right at this point, Project 25 clearly gave all of us the idea of what these people are saying. They're saying this is what happened back then, but we got a new horizon coming. We're going to change all this. And DEI and all these areas in which people are talking about clearly definitions for treating people right. Nice words, respect, inclusion. All these words that I and you and all of us used to talk about, we really were serious about it. We're still serious about it. What has happened is the leadership now that they are thinking about the fact that everything is smaller. And can you imagine having someone that's a multi-billion-dollar person interfering with an election? Can you imagine that
Yeah.
the way the society is now, we need to tell you to put you back in your place? Project number 25 is basically saying y'all gotten out of hand. I hate to use the word that way. Y'all had gotten out of hand. You got these women in these jobs, and you got these people of color speaking up, looking at people in the eye. You know, my mother, when I told her that I was playing ball and the white man told me to get back on his feet, my father said, never look at a white person in the eye. Please understand where I'm coming from. Today's environment says that people of color and women have started looking them directly into their eyes and looking at their value, because their value has diminished, 20-fold, simply because they don't have access to those jobs like they used to. I remember a case in the White House where I had a panel, just real brief, and the 4 people were looking for a senior accountant. 3 people of color applied for that job. But Tom was sitting there. If he's looking and listening to this, he knows what I'm talking about. And he was sitting there, and somebody said on the side of the mouth, but Tom, we got to give Tom the job because he got 3 kids. And 2 of them getting ready to go to college. So I walked in the door and I said, I'm sorry. I said, are y'all talking about this panel, this job? What is that about? I heard him. And Tom got the job. Can you imagine what's happening today? That's what happened. We stopped all that. That was 35 years ago. We stopped all that. Tom didn't have a degree. Tom must have had about 7 or 8 domestic hours, and it was a GS-15. 3 ladies applied for the job. All of them were. 2 of them were PhDs, the other one had double masters. And they weren't selected. I know, I was there looking at it. So what's happening today? the pendulum has gotten smaller. The issue is about DEI. It's an excuse. It's an excuse for the man to go back home and feel good about his family, saying, I stopped all that. I know I'm going to stop all that because, and he wouldn't say it's because these people are qualified. He would say, because I got to show them where we're coming from. Now, who do you show? So if we think about today's environment, this Project 25, I'm hoping and praying as an older fellow, I'm hoping and praying, and here's the strategy I'm saying. In my book, I talk about the challenge, the Black challenge in the back of the book. And if we really look at the Black challenge is basically saying work together. The Black challenge is really saying we can't neglect our folks in there. We need to make them rise up to the bar also. We can't, there's no more giving somebody a job just because they're this color.
Yeah.
We need to be qualified. But
Yeah.
the qualifications is based about the heart, because we have some people that are heavily qualified and don't know how to talk to one another, don't know how to speak to one another. And that's why I talk about the behavior style. But last but not least, when we're really talking about Project 25, these folks who are the authors of these various articles in that position paper is basically saying, people, women, get back. We're here and we're not going back no more. We're going forward in their perspective. And it's unfortunate that my strategy that I used 35 years ago is more evident today to be used to help one another and to encourage one another to look up. Do you realize that people of color are not going to allow people to talk down to them anymore? See, I had to accept it. I accepted that. One time I laughed and I went home and I went in the basement and had a bourbon. But having someone stand over my face and put their finger in it, I know how much money you make. And that tie that you wear is an expensive tie. And if you have 2 kids in private schools, I know how much money you make. How can you afford it? Are you doing anything illegal here in the White House personnel? See, I've had that. So just think about it today, in today's environment. Project 25 is saying, y'all have gone too far. You folks are too far.
You're getting too comfortable. You're starting to feel too good.
That's right. That's right. Y'all feel comfortable. Yeah, Mercedes out in front of your house. And who do you think you are? I can go a little further, but I'm going to keep it nice and clean. But,
absolutely. They always seem to know what your place is. And it's so interesting, Mr. Mobley, that you talk about the gender issues. Because, we've heard this example given a lot about making sure Tom is okay because he has kids, in spite of the feminist movement, in spite of all the work that women themselves have done when it comes to the workforce. And one area which I think is very interesting is even in law enforcement. The Department of Justice, they just reached an agreement with Maryland State Police to ensure that that they don't discriminate against their female officers. Let's watch this video on this topic before we move on to your personal life. Let's hear what the Department of Justice has to say about equality, Title VII, and women's rights in hiring. Yeah.
The Justice Department is announcing that we have secured a consent decree to resolve our findings that Maryland State Police discriminated against Black and female applicants by using hiring tests that unfairly and unlawfully excluded them from employment. Under this agreement, the police will adopt new tests, extend priority hiring opportunities to previously disqualified applicants after they complete the new and lawful selection process, and distribute $2.75 million in relief to people unfairly disqualified by the old test. Our investigation found that Maryland State Police's hiring practices for entry-level troopers violated Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibits employment discrimination based on race, sex, color, national origin, or religion. The old hiring tests that prompted the investigation here did not distinguish between candidates who could successfully perform the job of a trooper and those who could not. This made the tests not just ineffective, but unlawful. The underrepresentation of Black and female applicants in law enforcement undermines public safety, runs contrary to the principle of equal opportunity, and fails to reflect the rich racial and gender diversity of our communities. The Justice Department will continue its work to ensure equal access to employment opportunities for all Americans.
It's this the 1964 Civil Rights Act is still an issue today. Here it is. We're about to enter 2025. We just celebrated 60 years of the act, but yet we're still having to face issues in the workforce. Discrimination is real, and yet at the same time, there's still a very heavy-handed push against DEI, against the efforts being made to ensure we have an equal playing field for all Americans. So, what are your thoughts on what the Department of Justice just did? And how does it add to your own work and activism here in the East? In the DMV?
It's a major, right? It's a major concern. I think a lot of us are crossing the fingers and praying that Mr. Trump never got back in the White House again. Unfortunately, that did work, but that's our concern now. 4 or 5 of my brothers, friends, and sisters, yourself, are really concerned about the Office of Civil Rights and Justice Department. We're concerned simply because it's conceivable that this new director of the Department of Justice, these characters, and I use the word lightly, will try to destroy that whole division. It's conceivable that they're going to create something like an employee relations type phenomena that will deal with only non-discriminatory type of confrontations. So I think just about everybody is really concerned about the Office of Civil Rights. Whether we want to accept it or not, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was supposed to give us those protections. Today, we have people out here believe that it shouldn't have never been a law. Now, can you imagine, out of all these years, people being treated fairly, but the big cases, the landmark decisions, have overrun our whole situation in terms of whether or not we treated fairly or not. So my concern about the Civil Rights Act and the Civil Rights Division and the statement that Mr. Comer was talking about is something that's fundamentally going to put a lot of strength in our relationships with these new people.
Yeah.
we will have to show our colors, so to speak.
You think so?
So
You
we
think
can,
so?
oh yes, we're gonna have to show our colors because see the Constitution is unique.
Hmm.
14th Amendment. I mean, I don't want to get into all this legal stuff, but the bottom line is we have established ground, probable cause, decent probable cause. When something stinks, it stinks.
Hmm.
And the way they're driving at trying to circumvent what we're trying to do, they don't have a leg to stand on. It's just they're using hearsay. It doesn't feel right. It's not comfortable. I mean, it's like what we hear now. We hear a lot of that. A lot of that. Well, they said, who are they? Who are they? Would they come up in a line? They're not here. They're not here. So
It could be them. It could
I'm
be they.
serious. They make it up. They make it up because the law is there, very specific. Now, not unless they're gonna try. And let me tell you, you and I realize now it's conceivable,
Hmm.
just based on the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
that they're gonna try in their best to circumvent the law and maybe get rid of some of these things that we thought that was precious to us as it relates to equal opportunity.
Yeah. Well, no one really thought Roe v. Wade would be, you know, would no longer be the law of the land. But look what happened to Roe v. Wade. So anything is possible. And I think, considering that decision itself, it really tells you the the reality of the impacts of Project 2025 and how real they could be, in spite of our ability to be litigious and fight back. But you say we're going to have to, well, Democrats are going to have to gear themselves up for a real fight. I get it. But here's a little good news about the DMV area, at least in Washington, D.C. Even though the Maryland Department of State Police, MDSP, although
Right.
they're working on hiring more Black women and being more fair in their hiring practices, crime rate in DC is down. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office, violent crime overall has dropped 35% overall last year. So that's got to be a good thing for you, especially you and your wife are a huge activist in the area, in the DMV area, specifically Washington, D.C. I know this is some of the work that you've covered, making sure folks are being prosperous and safe. What are your thoughts on the crime rate going down, your work, your activism locally? What are your thoughts on what's happening here?
I'm glad you asked the question. I was saying for the last 25 years since I had early retirement. I often talk about it in the book that the only reason why I retired was that two people, the undersecretary and assistant secretary, just told me that I should retire. So I actually retired under a cloud. I only had 31 years of government service, and I wasn't old enough. But
Only.
they, you have to leave because 7 states are looking for you to hurt you. And I said, what? And how many Pierponts in the United States of America? Just one.
Yeah.
So that kind of encouraged me to retire early. But going back to your question about the city, we've done a lot of work in the city. In fact, I headed 2 or 3 major programs in the city. Actually, I trained over 400 taxi cab drivers in D.C. on system training. And in addition to that, I don't want to talk about the social issues in D.C., but I'm glad to hear that things are much better. 6 years ago, I worked for the Attorney General in D.C. He made me take a job simply because I had worked with him on his campaign and played a major role in it. But the bottom line is we focus on crime and, at that time, 7 years ago. But there again, it starts from the bottom. And the foundations are not there. And we're all of us trying. I work on a program right now. We're trying to get the foundation so that these kids, when they get 3 and 4 years old, they have something in their mind, and somebody's telling them something about respecting differences. The idea about conflict. Like we do a lot of conflict. I do conflict resolution. In fact, my daughter's son used to laugh at me because I would volunteer for 3.5 years. I volunteered in the D.C. school system and in the court system to do family disputes. That's how I became a professional mediator. This was long ago. And they were young kids. They wanted to see the case. Call me. Let me see the case. But Dad, I didn't think. But the bottom line is we have to come up with something. I'm glad that Maria Bowles has mentioned the fact that crime is down low. But that is not telling us on how we can prevent it from getting back to where it used to be. The only way we can do it, we got to come with, it's my personal opinion, and I made it reference to 2 or 3 of my council members in D.C. We got about 9 or 10 major buildings in D.C. that's empty. Why can't we start some type of program at the 7th grade area or before? These young people have to know something about right and wrong when they're 4 years old. If they don't, in fact, I was someplace not so long ago and I heard a little fella, and he was 5 years old, and he was talking to this young lady, young girl, and he was bullying her. I think about 12 years ago in D.C. we created what is called a bullying law. That's a lot of that's happening right here in D.C. public schools. If you don't learn it, how you going to facilitate it?
Yeah.
So, all the time that we spent, my wife and I, in all these various community-oriented entities, for the sole purpose of trying to get people to respect one another and all these other things. It seems as though we need some programs, please forgive me, that are related to motherhood. I belong to a group called Fatherhood. Seems as though that the burden has been placed on the mother so strong with the lack of men around, fathers, that a lot of the sisters just burden. I mean, I recall coming up, and one lady in particular, one friend of ours, her husband went to prison, and I used to beg her. She jumped in the car. I said, let me get the car with me. It's a two kids. And that's all I have. And I just admire her. Matter of fact, we just admire her. And they both the kids came out all right. But let me tell you, those are exceptions. In D.C., we need to come up with something to help the younger people to understand the difference in respecting one another. We can do conflict resolution when they're 5 years old, 3 years old, respecting gender relationships. But there is something that something has to be facilitated.
Well, according to the data, something is happening. Something good is happening because crime is not in spite of all that we see in the news and in spite of how frightening it can be. It was nice to read that crime has gone down. So, but you mentioned your lovely wife, Jeanette. So I wanted to end with your beautiful love story. So let me play this video of you and your wife, Jeanette, and the story of how you two met.
So you really did some research on it. That's my buddy.
Jeanette at a party in Southeast, way back in the day in the 60s when it was routine for people just to show up at parties. And I always felt that our meeting was divine because I wasn't supposed to be at that party. The party that I was supposed to be at was up on George Avenue. We got word that it was canceled. And so me and 2 or 3 people from my hometown in Pennsylvania, we said, oh, there's a party over on Raleigh Avenue, Southeast. Let's go over there. So we went over to Vincent's house, and I was young and very quiet and unassuming. And Pierpont and his friend were standing across the room, and he came over and he asked me to dance. And I told him no, I wouldn't dance with him. And I said, you're not going to show me up. I don't do all that DC dancing. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, they ended up taking us home because we had caught a cab over there. And my roommate and I, we invited him in for late coffee. And then after that, he called a few times, and I kept saying no. And so finally he called, and I said, okay. And once we went out there first time, that was it, right?
Yeah, that's true. But she just said that sounds right. Everything she said sounds right. She took me through the ringer quite a few times. But other than that, we connected as a result of that party, because she kept on saying she didn't know how to dance. And here I am from a DC boy. That's all we wanted to do is dance. We used to dance and sweat and hit, So I begged her to come out on the floor about 3 times. She finally got out of there. And she, after that dance for about 3 minutes, she said, 2 minutes, she got away. She said, let me get away from this guy. Because he really could dance. So
I hadn't learned the DC hand dance yet.
Right. So that's, I'm just adding to what she had just stated. But that is true. That's exactly how we met. And since at that time I was working, and I thought I'd check her out because she's kind of cute, and she didn't use a whole lot of poor English as far as I was concerned.
I didn't use profanity.
Yes.
He liked that.
No, I didn't like it. It was just the point that some of the people in D.C. That was our ongoing everyday livelihood. Not nasty, but some of the words that we would use. And she was a little more. She used the word gosh one time, and that knocked me off. I said, I guess I better take care of this sister. If she talked about gosh, I said, whoa.
Well, I thought that was so cute. I thought that was so cute, and how also sweet that your wife and I share the same name.
She said her name is Jeanette. I said, well, does she spell it with 2 T's? I said, yeah.
Yes, 2 T's and 1 N.
Yeah, that reminds me of back in the day when it was a long time ago, and it's ironic that her and I are tight, and we do a lot of work together right now. We just involved in about 5 different campaigns. We've been involved in a lot of things in D.C. She's now a commissioner on aging. I am now very active in selective service for the military. Every year we do a lot of interviews for the sole purpose of getting them young people to go to 4 academies: West Point, Navy Academy, under the auspices of Eleanor, Norton. In fact, in my book, she makes reference to me in the book. My book is unique in that I have at least about 16 or 17 individuals that actually give testimony in my book.
Oh, really?
Oh yes, they
Okay.
actually testimony. I have, and it's really unique. The publisher, who is Steph Curry's uncles,
Oh,
told,
nice.
yeah, told me, said, "Hey, since you've done so much for so many people, and the strategy that you have, can you call 2 or 3 of these people to vouch for you?" I said, "Certainly." So I called one, then I called another, and all of a sudden, there's about 16, 17 people. I've written long one. The first one, I almost wanted to cry myself. She just briefly, she came up with Jimmy Carter, and Jimmy Carter begged her to come up from Plains, Georgia, a sister, a person of color, and she came up, and she came in the office and told me, she said, "I just went upstairs, Mr. Mobley, to try to get a loan on the credit union because I just moved there, and I don't have no money to have no car up here." So I said, "Oh, okay." I said, "What you want me to do?" "I don't know. Can you help me?" I said, "I don't know. But do me a favor, go back up there and talk to him again." She went back up and talked to him again. She got the loan. So she came down there and walked in person in front of all these people. And I said, "What did you do, Mr. Mobley? I got the loan." And so it almost, she knocked me off my foot. But I called her back. I said, "Man, you better get this lady alone. She's Jimmy Carter's friend, man." So and I had 4 or 5 incidents like that, really, that not only Jimmy Carter, of course, made the first EO director, and prior to that, they never had that in the White House. Jimmy Carter made me do the first affirmative action plan because they never had an affirmative action plan for years.
Yeah.
And the White House tried to be exempt from everything, even though the laws were there. They would accept their appointment. Everyone that works for the White House, in my book, I emphasize, everybody that works for the White House doesn't accept their appointment. So they're in a quasi political job. But some of the folks that work in the file room has been 35 years. Nice grades, nice money, the correspondence unit, and the executive officers of the president. In fact, you have 11 agencies there, and I did affirmative action for all 11 of them.
Yeah.
For the sole purpose of trying to make sure that we could come up with some kind of regulation to make sure that they knew that they also had to be affirmative in terms of their hiring structure. OMB, places like that, Office of Science Technology, and I can do right down the list. But those small agencies, and OMB really that's one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government right now. And people don't realize it, but that's the main reason why they control that money through Congress. And so they can allocate different programs. And so I had to interact with them. And of course, I had a major dispute up there because African American women couldn't get promoted. So what is going on? So I was involved in it, and we cleaned it up. In fact, one of the people that testified in my book should make a reference to it. Then another one, yeah, I mean,
It's the Office of Management and Budget, the
that's
White
right.
House Office of Management and Budget.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It used to be called the Bureau of Budget. I'm a little far behind. Yeah, no, not really. I mentioned. I had one from Harvard School of Law who graduated with Obama, and she had a big dispute with the State Department, and came in here and told me that they told her that I was one of the baddest mediators in Washington, D.C. So I said, "No kidding." But anyway, she said, "A Harvard lawyer told you all." But I've been very fortunate and fortunate and lucky. God has really blessed me to be able to position. And that's one of the things I left in my book is I tried to identify the fact that a lot of young people, if they read my book and see what things that you and I, older folks, had to go through, because I'm not an exception. But the bottom line is, the uniqueness is that in the White House, the people have so much standards are so high. But you can see what's going president today. Yeah, I remember that no one could get in the White House not unless they had a full field investigation from the FBI. Okay? Full field. I've turned down 2 or 3 brothers and sisters and helped them get jobs in other agencies simply because they applied. Well, one and several in particular had fights while they were at work. Then they would show the police officer their badge. I said, why would you show your badge? They're out here the next day. So I had to run out and try to find them a job someplace else.
Yeah.
So it's been very rewarding for me to be in a position because I don't think they would ever, like I said earlier, they would never hire another person of color in there. You see everything. And I did all the interrogatories for a lot of interrogatories for the Watergate. I was a young guy trying to go to college. And I say, give it to that guy. Give it to that guy.
Yeah.
And so it's been a unique experience.
So, what are the 4 presidents that you served under?
Yeah, I served under LBJ.
Mm-hmm.
And LBJ came to the Situation Room one morning and knocked on the door. And I said, you can't get in one evening. You can't get in unless you show your badge. He said, I'm getting in there. I said, no, sir. You cannot get in unless you show your badge. He said, well, I'm the president of the United States. I said, the door's open, sir. Then I worked, of course, I worked with Nixon. Of course, he's a rough customer, very rough.
Really?
But he had a lot of, in my book, I make reference to the fact that he had quite a few people of color, males, and they had about 2 officers. They were domestic counsel. That's what when we created this office. But they knew their place. I hate to say it, but I'm being honest. I didn't elaborate more in the book about them. But they were nice. In fact, they tried to encourage me. Matter of fact, it took me twice. Wanted me to go down to one of their conferences because they couldn't understand how can I be a Democrat trying to help people, and they didn't want to get into that. And these were people of color. Why would you help people, Pierpont? And it bothered me. But I said, yeah, I go to their conferences, just to their conference. And that's one of the major, I think, personally, major conferences. The arrogance, like Clarence Thomas. This guy's so arrogant. I'm trying to figure out why he's so mad at everybody. And 6 years I worked with on the Ford and then Jimmy Carter. And I'm trying to figure out why the brothers are so arrogant. And and I was trying to help people, and they said, Pierpont, don't help these people. What's that about? And so, of course, the clients, when I went to the Interior Department, had the experience with the clients. I was chief of program planning and adjudication. And he just come out. It was like, you don't work here. Why are you in my law library? I said, I'm going to law school. He said, well, you need to get out of here. I don't never seen you work for me. At that time, he was the chairman of EEOC. I probably something don't realize that. Yeah, he was a piece of work. Piece of work. He was against affirmative action, against any class action suit. He was against everything. So in my book, I make reference to him. In fact, one of his chief spokespeople that was law school, I wanted to draft something to put in the book because they knew me. And I allowed them to put a paragraph in it. But the bottom line was, we're still trying to figure out why we're so angry with one another. So Democrats and Republicans, whatever. Yeah. So, but anyway, it's been very interesting.
And then your last president was Bush. Bush one.
The last president actually was Clinton. When I left, I came back on a task force with Clinton, to do the sexual orientation. It was one of 7
Oh,
of us.
wow.
And they called me back, and they wanted me to do when I was working for Mike Espy in agriculture.
Oh, I see.
And right, and they called me back and put me on their task force, the White House task force on sexual orientation. So I was one only brother out of 7 who wrote the policy. Actually, people don't realize, but Clinton and Mike Espy, who was Secretary of Agriculture, were the best of friends. They played jazz together 40 years ago. They were jazz players. I don't know if you remember Clinton, but maybe that's what you around. Yeah, you were around 21, 22. But they used to play jazz together, and so they became very good friends. So allegedly, Clinton people called and said, "Let the people from agriculture do this bill on sexual orientation." And so that was a unique experience for me because it was just it made the policy. The policy was a good policy, but the people wanted to make it a part of the Constitution. And they couldn't make it part of the Constitution, but it was finished.
What was the administration that you worked under that allowed you to have the most impact? Which administration would you say allowed you to have more impact in the work that you specialized in, which is really what we call DEI now?
Yes.
And
Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter. Those 4 years with Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
Remember, he's a social worker. He
Yeah.
really was. He's one. I think if they go back and just look at what he tried to accomplish.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah, because when he came in, you had diversity at his utmost. I mean, there were everybody that you could name because that was his way of life.
Yeah.
And so it was stuck up. They'd come in and say, come in and ask questions, young people, whatever. And if a lot of them from Atlanta, Plains, not too far from Atlanta, whatever.
Yeah.
So they became very, very, very well respected. In the 4 years that he was there. The least was of course, I was Nixon. Nixon, he had some rough people. I used to handle about 40 consultants that were involved in the Watergate. Put it in a book.
I see.
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
But I knew some of those.
Yeah.
Because I was in a unique position because I just handled all the consultants that came to the office. Knew them all. I taught them the Hatch Act and things of that nature. So I had to.
Where can people pick up your book, Mr. Mobley?
Yeah, they can get the Black Side of the White House. They can get it on Amazon. Or if they live in D.C., they can call us. I have them on hand. This was very unique for me when we decided to do this book. My wife said, "Serious?" So it was a challenge. But I tell you seriously, it was a benefit for me because the book in itself has opened the door for a lot of people because a lot of people, we had a launch in the book, and I think we sold over 200 copies in one night, just like that, simply because it's different. One and two is that I'm not special. It's just that I had an opportunity to be special working in the White House. So my upbringing, the way I came up, small, uneducated in the very environment, and had to go to school for 12 years and do all these things. That one of the messages, message I talk to young people now every Tuesday. I give them 2 hours. That they have to have perseverance. So if you think you're the baddest person in the United States, go out and start being around other people because I really believe you asked that question earlier. Peer pressure. We should
Yeah.
call it a long time ago peer pressure. It's still there. If
Yeah.
you're gonna have it, I mean, I'll tell you a story on me in real brief. I was on 8th Street and about 16 years old, and a friend of mine said, "Come on, get in the car." I said, "No, man, I'm not getting in the car." "Oh, man, you always chicken. I'm not getting in the car."
Mhm.
I walked from home. We were in high school. I walked from. And my mother thought that she heard that this car was raided. It had dope, drugs, everything in the car. That was that car. And so my mother got home. She was a beautician. And
Mhm.
she had on 8th Street Northeast. And she just knew I was locked up with those guys. And after that, my father looked at me and my mother looked at me and said, "Don't go down there no more." I went back 25 years later with, with a graduate degree.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. What a story. And you're right. And peer pressure has only gotten worse, more intense. So to be able to dedicate, your time, 2 hours every Tuesday to help young people really stay focused and on track is very, very important because it's so easy to get lost in all of it. And I really also love your message, Mr. Mobley, about the the ongoing training that folks need to be engaged in, and just taking part of all the access that have come available to those who never had it before, and for us not to take any of it for granted, because a lot of work did go into the civil rights movement, equal rights, women's rights, children's rights, LGBTQ rights. Rights are still being are still needing to be protected. You know, uh, Bob Marley once says, "Evil never takes a day off, and good shouldn't either." And so it is in that philosophy I admire your book and all the work that you've done to ensure that good never takes a day off. So
Absolutely.
to the end of our show, and as you know, Mr. Mobley, we end with a question of the day.
Okay.
Um, so our question of the day today is going to be something lighthearted. So, question of the day to you as we are, it's the holiday season. Happy holidays, by the way. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Happy holidays to everyone. Question of the day. What are your 2025 New Year hopes for America? And mind you, we've had a pretty intense election cycle. People are nervous, people are on edge about all these new appointments, what the federal government is going to look like, what America is going to look like and feel like, not just domestically, but also when it comes to our foreign policy. Being one of the guards of the White House, one of the OGs of the White House, having the honor of serving under 4 presidents. Looking into the future, having come out of this election, what are your thoughts and what are your 2025 New Year hopes for America?
I think one of the major things I've been worrying about is that we collectively allow people to benefit from us. And a lot of my colleagues are now thinking we need to stand up more.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? What does that entail? If it's a dog, you have to be a dog too. And when I'm saying that is that it seems as though that we have allowed people to run. In my neighborhood, they call it game on one another. The
Mm-hmm.
other side is we're not standing up for it, for our rights. All the things that we've done people in the past, in human and civil rights and all these other things, the LGBTQ rights, the whole 9 yards. We've got to stand up for what we feel is right. And I just feel as though that this new environment that we're in, where it seems like business had taken over everything. It's a fellow X and others taking over things. Hey, we got to stand up. Go to jail if you need to go to jail. My folks went to jail. Back in the day, a lot of our folks went to jail, but for a cause. And I got a strong feeling today we are so involved in our money that we don't take any risk. And so if I had to uh, give someone a challenge, and in my book I emphasize the black challenge. And the black challenge is really saying you got to stand up for your rights. Stand for your rights, and you also have to encourage others to stand up for their rights. And if your peer pressure, if your peers are not right, you don't need to be with that peer. In other words, find some good people that you hang around with, that you're relative with. You know, everybody working in the same environment toward the same goal of respect and movement.
So your hopes are basically to summarize is when they go low, prepare to go lower.
No, that's right. Well, you know, Jeanette, you're absolutely right because you think about it. That was a lovely way Michelle said it, but it didn't make sense. Now, today, we see it because we can go. Oh, they can go high and where things are, but if you're not willing to go up there with them to fight them, and that's what seems what happened, what occurred, is that we have allowed others to dictate how we do things instead of saying, wait a minute, this is not right. And I tell you what, I believe if we really start, we don't have to be belligerent or nothing like that. Why can't we make references? Did you take that back home to your kids? Did you talk to your children about this? What you do right now, see, I don't believe we people of color really understand the strategy of how to beat that other man. I feel as though that I did because I used to look at him and I said, well, yeah, brother. And the fellow would look at me, turn red as a bee because I just called him brother. And I raised my hand, leaned my hand out like I want to shake his hand. It took away all of his power and gave me all the power. I have all the power because I just took it from you. I took it from you. You treat me, and then I'd say, "Did you really think you treated that person right? Think about it." I tell you what, I'll be back. I have walked out on a lot of clients. A lot of clients said that one major one in the Defense Department, major. The guy worked on a Monday as a woman, walked in the door and walked past, went to secretary. And the secretary, well, you can't, that's Mr. Carson's office. And he turned around and said, well, I'm Mr. Carson, but now you call me Miss Carson. Big dispute. He had about 500 people working for him all. Respect. I just told him, I said, well, he said, well, they got to respect me. I said, well, okay. I said, well, I'll be back. Just think about it. You're head of a division and you feel good, comfortable with what you're doing. I said, but you hit him. You kind of shocked them when you did that. You really shocked people. I said, well, let me get back. I'll be back. You know you about my back. You stand back down the wall. That's me. Consider it. You get the point. They'll be the community, everything. I said, let me leave. I'll be back. I got to the elevator. I heard him say, bring that car back in it. I transferred it. Got him transferred back to Texas. There was nothing. And the division like the power the whole person. And I said, who is this guy? Pierpont Mobley did this album. It's something honest. And so if I can leave a word to anybody, try to be fair to them. Show him respect and have him turn him for me. You can't give it if you don't have it.
Yeah.
You can't give up. If you can't respect, and look out not too long ago, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, he said something was going in the hall. I was like, are you serious? He just dropped his head. Man, you can't do that in front of me. Come on, man. Yes, sir. You can't do it in front of me.
Well, Mr. Pierpont Mobley, it was an absolute pleasure and a great honor to be in conversation with you. I'm a fan, and I'm grateful for all the work you've done to help uplift us. And I hope you consider this part of your flowers, your acknowledgement and recognition, because the work is ongoing, and you've certainly done your part. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you think is important to know before we end our broadcast?
No, I think.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. What were you doing with that? What would you like? Go ahead.
Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like people to know?
No, I know that if they buy this book and read this book, they're really going to have. It's different. It's really different. But I'm getting so many positive feedbacks. Mobley, are you joking me?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious? And the mere fact you have differences, people talking about what has happened to their lives as relates to civil rights and human rights, in terms of dealing with the system, because the system has allowed these other people to get power over us. We have allowed. Stop. Now, maybe that was a good idea for me to do a case in Minnesota to allow these research directors get off the hook. Because this one brother, a scientist, who's done more patterns than anybody in the whole state of maybe I did a disservice to him to only get him a job, get him a promotion. But I often think about it in retrospect. We should have raised hell of it. But my role wasn't to raise hell. My role was to satisfy this brother, a client who was a client, and get him feel better. So and his wife got on the phone, laughing on the phone. She says, Mobley, who are you? What are you doing? So I benefited from it. And so I think that they look at the book, look at the challenges. They can get it on Amazon, or if they live in D.C., they can call me up on the telephone there. And 9 times out of 10, I have one of my cohorts or one of my friends. They may even deliver it to their house.
I like that.
Huh?
I like it. Maybe you can have a book club. It can be on one of the local book clubs or something. Is it on audiobooks? Do you have this?
That's it. We just launched the book 4 weeks ago. Yeah. No, not yet. We're contemplating on thinking about it, but it seemed like I get on TV, get on the internet, and these people are just writing that. How can I get the book? So I said, keep on. I think I'm going to send one to Oprah. I don't know. I told my wife.
Why not? Why not? This is historic. This is American history, American culture. So it is part of the blueprint, and I think it's certainly worthy of discussion and understanding. And so I look forward to getting my own copy. And I'm very happy that I had an opportunity to talk to you about your book, your experience with it. So I feel very lucky.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll endorse it. I'll endorse it. So if you can find a way to connect the dots, you got my signature, which is going to be worth $3 next week.
I'm sure it'll be worth a lot more. Well, Mr. Mobley, it was an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much again. I would also like to thank you all for joining me for another edition of EPA Live. I'm Jeanette Lenoir with E Pluribus America, and this is Our American Culture.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. And where'd you say you were from?
I'm from Suriname.
Suriname. Where's
Yeah.
that? Where is that?
It's in South America.
That's right, South America. Okay, I'm not drinking. I'm all right.
No, it's okay. All right. See you on the other side.
The best. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.